JavaScript is everywhere. It runs websites, builds apps, it even controls your fridge, probably. We can do all sorts of cool things with it, such as writing self-promoting console log statements. But today we are going to do something way cooler. We are going to build a to-do list application. What this to-do list application will do is we will let the users add to-dos. We will let users add to-dos, mark them as complete, as well as remove them. The best part is we will be building this using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And this is a super beginner friendly tutorial, a common question that is asked even in a lot of interviews. So yeah, buckle up and yeah, let's build this step by step, because in future when AI will take your job away, it also will need a to-do list to maintain to-dos. So yeah, let's add this creation of to-do list to your to-do list. So yeah, let's quickly get started with the code. But before we do that, let's go through the setup once. It's nothing fancy. I just have an index.html, a script.js, and the styles.css. Y'all can add everything in the index.html as well, but I have created separate files, and make sure all of them are in the same folder at the same level. If you're planning to add your styles in a separate folder, make sure you add the path correctly while linking it. Okay, so let's make use of emit and get this basic boilerplate code. Okay, now we'll start by linking our styles.css, the style sheet that we have. Okay, the easiest way to do that is, again, as you can see, I'm getting hints from emit. So we'll pick this one, link:/css, and yeah, make sure you add the correct file name. Here I have styles.css. The auto-generated one didn't have the s at the end. So whatever your file name is, make sure you add it correctly. And yeah, if this is in a separate folder, make sure to add the path correctly. Okay, next we'll start with the script tag. Okay, script src script.js. This is how we link our JavaScript. Okay, and let's just quickly test this out if this setup is working. The styles are pretty visible, but for JavaScript, it's always good to check. So yeah, cooking the code. Okay, I'm already running my index.html file using live server. Y'all can, if y'all don't have live server, y'all can download it using the extension tab in VS Code, or else just copy this path and just paste it in your browser. It should be fine. Okay, but we have live server, so yeah. So as you can see, I had to refresh it once because I don't know, maybe some issue, not sure. But yeah, we can see that we have cooking the code in the browser. Okay. Great. So our JavaScript has been linked correctly. Now, let us start by adding the basic boilerplate. Okay. So the way we'll go about with this is we'll create one feature at a time. Okay. And then we'll proceed to the next one. Okay. And we'll add the styles at the end. Okay. Because the most important thing in software development is always functionality over styles. The functionality should be fine. Yeah, of course, we need to have some basic styles as well, but yeah, functionality is important. Okay, so the very first step would be to let the user add a particular task. Okay, now to add a particular task, think about it. What we would need, the very first thing that we would need would be an input box, right? We would need an input box. Okay, an input box of type text, right? So something like this. Okay. Now I'm giving this an ID. I don't require this name property as of now, so we'll keep it simple. So the ID that I'll be giving it will be task-input. Okay. Why am I giving this ID? We'll see in a minute. And let me add some placeholder text. Add a new task. Okay. So let's quickly see if this is getting rendered. Okay. So yeah, this is getting rendered over here. Okay. Now what we need to do is the user will type something over here. Okay. And then they'll hit the send button. I already got some suggestions. So what we want to do is we want to add a button over here, which when we click on, okay, we store this somewhere or we render it. Let's talk about rendering first. Rendering as in displaying. We'll come to the store part later. For now, we'll just try to display this text over here. okay, in this blank space over here. Okay, and then the user can come over here and they can type in another to do, and then this list just stacks up. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to I was speaking about, we want to trigger that adding function on a button click. Let me just close this. So let me add a button quickly. Okay, button, um we can call it add for now. And again, this will require an ID. Okay, why we require an ID? Because we have to access these in our JavaScript, right? Because we want to make this dynamic. Okay, let's call it add task. Okay, so let's also, while we are at it, let's add a header as well. Call it to do list. Yep. Let's quickly see the output. Okay, great. We have got a button. We have got our heading as well. Okay, so we also need a section where we will add a particular to-dos. Okay, so let me add that as well. Why I'm adding this, we'll see this in a moment. Okay, I'm using an unordered list. You all can use anything. I am using an unordered list because we will see that. Okay, we'll see. It will all make sense. Okay, so before we proceed, okay, let me just tell you what my intuition is. Okay, or what my thinking is. Okay, so right now y'all can't see this thing. Okay, but there are four main elements over here. Okay, one is this heading, right, which is over here. The second is this input box, which is over here. Okay. Next is the add button, right, which is over here. Okay. And next we have this unordered list section, which is, believe me, it is over here somewhere. Okay. So what we will do is the user will come over here, they'll add, click on the button, and then create a YouTube video will be displayed over here. Okay, then the user will come and they'll add a new to do. They'll click on add, then they'll have two items. One is create a YouTube video, and then the second one will be test. Okay, so yeah, let's now, this was the HTML part. Now let's quickly go to the JavaScript part. Okay, so over here we have this console. Let us remove it. Okay, now remember how I gave IDs over here. Okay, now the reason why I gave IDs is we want to capture these elements in our JavaScript, right? So how does JavaScript, so understand one thing, JavaScript is used to manipulate the DOM. I mean, it is used for many things. Um, but one of the key uses of JavaScript is for us to manipulate the DOM. Manipulate as in manipulate the DOM. What does DOM mean? DOM means document object model. We'll talk about that later someday. But basically, the idea is JavaScript will help us manipulate this UI, this user interface, this HTML that we see in front of us. Like you can remove things, you can add things, you can change colors, you can add CSS classes, you can update existing elements. So all that is done using JavaScript. Now, why am I talking about IDs then? Because JavaScript needs to know what needs to be updated, what needs to be changed, right? And an ID is like, in college or in school, you have roll numbers that are given and that are unique, right? In a particular class, at least they are unique to every student, right? So this ID is like that particular roll number. Okay, that will be unique for every element, and we access these elements in JavaScript using those IDs. We can access them using their class or their tag names as well, but the most preferred approach is IDs. Okay, at least at a beginner level. Okay, so the very first thing is we need to tell JavaScript that these particular things uh, are referenced in our JavaScript. Okay, so the way we do that is this way: task input. You can create any variable name. Okay, now the way we access that particular ID is by this method, get element by ID. Okay, and within quotes we'll add the, what will we add over here? Inside this we'll add our ID. What is our ID? This thing. Okay, so let me just copy it. Okay, now what happened after I wrote this line? Now JavaScript knows that if in future it wants to target this input element. Why this input element? Because we use this particular ID, right? Now JavaScript knows that if it wants to target or manipulate this particular thing that I've highlighted, it will do that using this variable. Okay, because the reference of that has been stored in this particular variable. How did we get its reference? With the help of this document.getElementById. Okay, so again, you can keep any variable name. Now there were, if you remember, there were four elements, correct? One was the header, um, One was this input box, one was this add button, and the other was that unordered list, right? So the header, we don't need to target that much, but we need the other three. Okay, so the input box I've taken over here. Now I need to take the button and the unordered list as well. Okay, so I'll just quickly do that in the same way. Sorry, document dot get element by id. Okay, and again we'll get the id from here, right? Add task is the id name for the button. Okay, const task list, and we'll take document dot get element by id. And over here, what will be the id? The id that we have taken is task list. Okay. Okay, so we have got references for all these elements. Okay. Now I'll just console one of them to show you what exactly I mean, what exactly is stored in this. So let me just console this task input. Okay. Now, show the console. As you can see, right, this input element is targeted. Okay, same way, if I take this, we'll have the button, right? We'll have the, sorry for that, we'll have the button, right, with the id add task, as you all can see. Sorry. Now we need to enable some functionality using the add button, right? So the idea is, as explained previously, the user will come over here, they'll type a particular task, test 2, and then they'll click on add button, right? And after that, that whatever they have typed over here in this input box, that will be rendered over here. Okay. Now understand one thing, okay, that when how will we know, right? We have to add a particular functionality, right? So how will JavaScript know that, okay, at a particular button click, I have to do this particular thing? That's what we are doing, right? Whatever will be typed here, after clicking a button, that text will be displayed over here, right? So how will JavaScript know that? Okay, so these are called as events in JavaScript. There are many kinds of events, like scrolling, clicking a button, and many more. There are many events in JavaScript. Okay, key presses, etc., etc. Right. So the way we capture events and what to do after that particular event has occurred is done using something called as add event listeners. Okay. So we captured the ID with the help of this function. Now let's say we want to capture something that happens using a button click. How will we capture that, right? So we do that using add event listener. Okay. So if you see, I'll hover over this documentation. If it comes, yeah. So, okay, this might be too overwhelming, but remember, this has two parameters. Okay. One is the type of event. Okay. So we want it on a button click. Okay. So we add click over here. And second is our function, right? Is our function. Okay. We add a function over here, and for now, let's just add console.log. Okay. Right. Now, if we see the console, nothing's printed. Strange, right? Let me refresh. Nothing's printed, right? Because I have to click the button, right? Okay. So you can see that whenever we click, we get this test variable. But now, let's say there was another button. Okay. Let me just add another button over here. Okay. Remove. Okay. And let's remove this for now. Okay. Okay. So now, as you can see, I've got two things. Okay. Now I click on the add button, we get test. That is expected behavior. When I click on remove, do we want to carry out that particular functionality? No, right? Because we want that particular, there could be n number of buttons, right? We don't want uh, some other buttons functionality to be triggered from some other button. Like let's say if you have gone on Instagram and you hit follow. Do you want to remove that person from your following? No, right? Or do you want to message them? No, right? Uh, so in the same way, when I hit remove, we should not be logging anything, right? This function that we have defined inside a JavaScript should not be called, right? Like it was getting called for add. So let's just see what happens. Okay, this is a problem, right? How do we fix this? We know add event listeners capture the event, right? But we want to restrict this particular functionality only for the add button, right? So the way we do that is we take the reference, right? We take the reference, let me just remove this. We take the reference of this okay, which we have already done over here in line number 2, and we add this over here. Okay. Okay. Let me add that back. Okay. So now I am telling add event listener to watch out for clicks, but only for this particular button. Okay. And how does it know? Because of this on line number 2. Okay. So now if you'll see, I click add, I'm getting the log as test. I'm getting it. Okay. When I click on remove, it doesn't work. Okay. Which is expected. Okay. This is what we were expecting. Don't want to render test over here, right? And we'll come to this remove later. But what we want is we want to log in, we want to log or we want to render. The end goal is what? We want to pick up this thing from here and we want to store it over here. I mean, we want to display it over here, correct? But right now we are not doing that, right? So let's build that quickly. Okay. So first of all, let me just remove that button, remove that remove button. Yeah, sorry for that bad joke. Now we need to trigger some sort of functionality over there, right? So what we'll do is, right, okay, we can add our details over here, what we want to do. Now, the very first thing is we want to capture the information that is inside this text box, okay? Like for example, create a YouTube video. We want to capture that. The way we do that is using by getting a reference of that particular input box, which we have got on line number 1, right? Now, what we'll do is we'll use this very same thing, this very same variable name, okay? And let me access the value of it. The way you do that is, you guessed it, using the dot value method. Okay, sorry, yeah, using the dot value method. Okay, now let me just log this. Okay, let's see if it is working. Okay, console.log. Okay, so let me quickly add this. Okay, so now on add button, we are triggering this function that is logging the value of this task input variable. Okay, so let's see what we'll get. We are getting create a YouTube video. Now let me change subscribe to, okay, the code. Okay, we get that as well, right? So it's working as expected. Test, it's working as expected. Now we don't need to log it, we don't want to log it in the console, we want to display it over here, right? We want to display it below, right? What is below? We have this unordered list, right, that we had defined, if you remember at the start. So now we'll want to add our tasks that the user has entered after the button click to that particular section. Okay, so yeah, let's get started with that. Okay, so I'm sorry, I removed that. Basically, what I meant to do was remove this console.log. And what I want to do is I want to store this particular thing in a variable. Okay, so let's call this task text. So I've taken this value. Okay, it will contain whatever was typed in that particular input box, and it will store this in for this particular variable. Okay, now this is an unordered list, right? If you are familiar with HTML, we'll have an unordered list, and inside that we'll have, you know, several list tags, right, that will have information, right? Something like that. Okay, right, it will be something like that, right? So the end goal is whatever the user types, it should be displayed in this fashion. Basically, why I'm showing this to you is because we need this particular tag over here. Okay, let me remove this. So the idea is now we have to create that list tag, right? List tag slash the li tag, whatever you want to call it, right? We have to create that list tag, add the input box data to the list tag. Okay, and add the list tag that contains the input box data to the UL or the unordered list that we created over here. Okay, now let's do this step by step. Okay, so we have captured, we want to create, we'll start by creating this particular list tag. So the way we do that is very simple. Okay, we use document dot create element. Okay, create element, and inside this we'll specify what kind of tag we want. What do we want? We want an li tag. Okay, so let's quickly add that. Okay, now we'll take this and store this in a particular variable because we want to access it later. Okay, Let's call this li tag. Okay. Now, next, we want to add the input box data to this particular list tag. Okay. So how do we do that, right? We do that using the text content property. What we'll do is we'll take li tag dot text content and we'll simply add that input box data. Okay. Where is that input box data? It is over here, right? We captured it earlier in task text. This is also done. Step 2 is also done. Now, finally, what we have to do is we have to add this to the UL. Okay, so the way we do that is we take the reference of that UL as in the unordered list, right? Which is over here, right? Task list, if you see, right? This is the ID of the UL. Okay, we'll take this, okay, and we'll do append child. Okay, even append will work in this scenario. Okay, and we'll simply add this tag over here. Okay, and yeah, that should be it. That should be it. Okay, so let me just see that. That's it. It's working, right? Let's add another item. It's working. Let's add another item. Buy vegetables. Okay, so it's working as expected. Before we proceed, let me just change these variables, make them a bit better so that they are easier to read. I'm changing all these li tags to li. Okay, and let's just test it again. Yeah, it's working as expected. Okay. Now let's go to the next functionality. So the next functionality that we'll work on is deleting a particular task. Okay. Now the idea is that every to do will have a delete button over here. Okay. Which when clicked on will delete that particular to do. Okay. Or that particular task. Okay. Now, how do we do that? So I mentioned, right, that we need to have a button, right? A cross button or an X button for every one of these to-dos, right? But how are we adding this over here, right? We are adding this particular thing by creating an li element over here, okay? So the idea is along with the li element, we also want to add a particular delete button that will have its own functionality of removing or deleting that particular to-do or task, okay? I know it sounded a bit complex if you're a beginner, but yeah, that's the idea how we'll do it. Okay. Now, how will we do that? Let's quickly go through that. Okay. So let me just remove these comments as they are unnecessary. Right? I mean, they've served their purpose. Okay. Now we are capturing this text over here. Okay. We are then creating this li element, right? And we are capturing the text content, and then we are appending it to the ul. Okay, so all this is fine, but in between what we need to do is we need to create a delete button and we need to add it to this li element. Okay, what will happen or when the user clicks on that particular delete button, that also we need to add, but we'll do that ahead. Let's go step by step. Okay, so the very first step that we need to do is we need to create a delete button. Okay, after that what we need to do is we need to add it to this we need to add it to this li element, right, li elements. Okay, now how do we create it? The answer is right in front of our eyes on line number 7, right? We create a delete. See, we need to create a button. Could be delete, could be add, could be multiply, could be whatever, right? But we are creating what? A button, right? So how do we do that? We do that using document.getElementById, right? Over here. What do we want to create? A delete button, right? So just like we have done on line number 7 in the same fashion. Okay. Let's call this delete btn. Okay. Okay. So step 1 is done. Now what we need to do is we need to add this to the li element, right? So again, li dot and child, right? then what will we append into this? So just let's see if this is working. If this is working, we'll move ahead. Okay. So the idea is that whenever the user comes, they type a particular to do, okay, or they select one. In our case, you can even type, the functionality won't change. The idea is when they click the add button, previously we were just rendering a list, but now we want to render a list, and each of the items should have a particular button. Okay. So you can see that a button is generated. My bad. Let me just add some particular text to that button. If you remember, right over here, we were adding this text content to that particular li. Hence, we are getting that. But in the button case, we forgot to add that. Okay. Add text. Okay. Let's add an emoji. Okay. Delete button dot text content. Right. We add it using the text content. Only difference is over here we'll be adding an emoji, which is the which is right over here. Okay. So yeah, this should work. So let's quickly test that. Okay. As you can see, we have this particular X. The styles are really messed up, I know, but we'll cover the styles at the end. As I mentioned, style will be our final priority. The first priority in software development is always functionality. Let's test this with multiple tasks. Okay. Yeah. So it is coming with them all. Okay. My bad, I wrote, but okay. Yeah. It will be useful in such scenarios. Um, okay. So now we need to add the functionality on this particular button click, correct? How do we do that? How do we do that? How did we add functionality on the add button? Using the add event listener, right? So in the similar fashion. And how did we tell JavaScript? By using the reference of that button. Okay? So now in the similar fashion, we already have the reference of this button, right? So now we need to take that, right? We need to take that right here. Before that, let me just uh, add a comment stating what we are going to do. And delete functionality to the delete button. Okay. So add event listener on what event? On the click event, correct? And what do we want to do is we want to remove, right? We want to remove. Okay. So how did we add? We added it using li.appendChild. If we want to remove, we'll do something like li.remove. Okay. Uh, let's not forget the parenthesis. Okay, so let's see if this is working. So create a YouTube video, add, test, add. Okay, and let's add another to do, play games. Okay, let's say I want to remove this test. So the idea is when I click this button, this particular function will get triggered and it should remove it. Okay, let's see if that is working. And it is working, right? Let's remove another one. It is working. Remove all of them. So this was how the delete functionality works. So far we have added the functionality to add a task, delete a task. Now, what if the user wants to mark a particular task as complete? Okay. So the idea is the user comes over here, he adds a task, and let's say he wants to complete this. So the way he'll do it is he'll click over here on this particular text, and then a strike mark will appear on this. Okay. So how will we do that? Okay. Basically, what we want is we want to add some sort of CSS over here. Okay, that will add a strike mark. Okay, so let's create that CSS class first. Let's call it completed. Okay, and what we'll do over here is we will add a text decoration. I think that is the one. And yeah, that is the one. And then we also want to change the color to, let's say, gray. Okay. Now the idea is we want to add this particular class to that particular text when the user clicks on that text. So first of all, let me remove this extra comments because they've served their purpose. Right? So we targeted the add button using the add button reference that we got through the document.getElementById. We targeted delete button in a similar fashion, right? Using this delete button, as you can see. Similarly, we want to target the text. The text is where the text is in the li, right? So we'll simply do li dot add event listener. And when do we want it? When the user comes and clicks on it, right? And we want to add a function. mm, let's just see if this is working first. Link clicked. Let's quickly check. Sorry for that. Let's quickly check that to YouTube video, the console, right? So it is working, right? We're getting these logs, but we want a strike to appear. So the way we do that is, how did we add text to the li tag using the text content property? We added an event listener using the add event listener. When we wanted to remove, we used this particular method. And similarly, now to add a particular CSS class, right? What we'll do is we will take that particular element and we'll use a function called as class list. Okay, class list. And now keep in mind, we want to add it, right? Let's talk about add first. And the name of the class that we had defined was completed, right? Let's test this out. Let's take a better Todo. It's not working, right? Why? So this is a very fundamental CSS mistake, right? We have defined a particular class, right? We need to add it this way. Okay. So it should work now. Yeah, see, it worked, right? It worked. It when I forgot that particular dot, right? It did not work, right? So the reason why I did it is for you to remember. A lot of times we tend to forget this. Okay, this is pretty important. Else, you'll be thinking that there is something wrong with, the method or something. Okay, but this is sort of done and sort of not. Why? Because we also want to. What if the user came and they clicked on this by mistake, right? That is a very high possibility, right? So we want to, in a way, we don't want to just add it. We want to toggle it, right? We want to toggle it, right? So the way we have added it, right? What we actually want to do is, you see, there should be a method. Okay, now this should do the job for us. Click, and when we click another time, it should remove it. Okay. Works as expected. And let's add another to buy vegetables. Click on add. Yep, it's working as expected. Remove works as well. As you all can see, the functionality of our to-do list application is working pretty well, right? We are able to add multiple items. We are able to mark them as complete, as well as we are able to remove them, right? But now it looks pretty ugly, right? So the functionality part is done. Now we need to focus on the styling, right? So um, in most interviews, they will rarely ask you about styling. I mean, practical questions are pretty rare. I haven't experienced a lot of styling questions. Mainly what they focus on is the functionality. So even if you'll do so much, it's good. Always in software development, the first priority is always functionality. Styling is the second. Okay, so I have already uh, added the styles. I'll go through them as well. Okay, so before we add the styles though, I want to add all of this in a container tag, right? Okay, and I want to add this over here. Okay, my bad. Should get div, right? And I want to remove this as well. Okay, so this is the only thing I've enclosed all of our logic within a container. Okay, and this was the style that we had added for the strike through. Let me just add the rest. Okay, this has come twice. Let me remove it. So yeah, I haven't saved it. This is what it used to look before. And now let's see the after. Great, right? Looks completely different and looks much better. So again, as you can see, we can remove, add things, we can mark them as complete, and we can even remove them. Okay, so the functionality works perfectly, right? So let's go through the styles quickly. I've done nothing fancy. I've just added all these things for the body tag. Notice how I've added flex over here. So basically, This is Flexbox. If you all want, I can create a separate video on this. Basically, when you declare something as flex, um, Flexbox is usually used for layout purposes, right? Flexbox has two properties: justify content and align items. So there are two concepts in Flexbox. One is the main axis and one is the cross axis. The In this case, the main axis is the horizontal axis. If you want to align something over there, we use this property. There are many properties: space between, space around, etc., etc. Right? And when you want to align items on the cross axis, we use the align items property. Let me know. I can create a detailed video on Flexbox in the future. And these are just some styles I've added to the container. Basic, very basic CSS. And this is for the input tag, and then this is for the button. Some general properties, over property. This, if you are aware, right, when I hover on a particular button, it will change its color to, if you see, there is a slight color change, right? And then for the UL, I have added again Flexbox, because I want the delete button as well as the text in the to do to appear side by side. Okay, and over here, if you see, I've added space between, right? Hence, when I add it, you can see both are at the ends, right? And that's it for this video. We just built a simple yet powerful to-do list using JavaScript, to-do list or task list, whatever you want to call it. And we added functionality like, adding a to-do, removing a to-do, and marking a to-do as complete. Now note, this was a very basic implementation. We can add a lot of features, such as, persisting all these to-dos in local storage, but this was a beginner-friendly video, so we have kept it till here. In future, maybe we can build on top of this. Please let me know if you all want that. Um, and yeah, I hope you all liked this tutorial and found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so that you do not miss on any updates. Also, let me know in the comments what you all want me to create a video on next. Let me know if there are any questions as well on this tutorial. And let me know. We can even create a full stack application someday for this. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.